My wife forged my name on a $330,000 loan, sold our house, and moved her boyfriend in. As they toasted their victory, FBI agents were already at the door. She stole my home, my savings, and 13 years of trust. But the moment I turned on the security feed, everything changed. My name is David, and I am a 42-year-old staff sergeant in the 82nd Airborne. Sarah decided she'd had enough of waiting after 4 months in Kandahar. The subject line was, "Let's be adults about this." The message was 3 sentences long. She had already filed the paperwork. She had already depleted our joint account. She had already brought her new boyfriend Jeremy into our Spokane home. I read the email twice, shut off my laptop, took a shower in the shared cubicle, dressed for my shift, and said nothing to anyone. When I returned to my bunk that night, I responded with a single word. Understood. That was it. There will be no arguing, begging or threats. Wilson, my bunkmate, recognized something was wrong. "Are you good, man?" he inquired, not looking up from his reading. "Yeah," I replied. "Just some stuff back home." He nodded and that was all. Military personnel know when to leave things alone. The truth is, I was not surprised. 6 months before deployment, circumstances had altered. Small things. Sarah stopped asking about my day, started working late at the dental office answering phones, and went to the gym 3 times a week without breaking a sweat. New clothing. I made new pals I had never met. New passwords for her phone. I did not confront her, start checking her texts, or follow her around. That is not who I am. But I was not blind either. So I made a few discreet movements of my own. Nothing dramatic, just cautious. I kept vital documents in a storage unit across town, including a birth certificate, marriage license, a property deed with only my name on it thanks to the VA loan, and military benefits documentation. I moved my grandfather's watch and my mother's antique silver to the same unit. Things that were important. I then opened a secret account with a different bank and began diverting a portion of my earnings there. Not enough for her to notice, but enough so that if things went wrong, I wouldn't have to start over. The night before my deployment, she hugged me at the airport and whispered, "Stay careful, okay?" Her eyes were dry, as if she were saying farewell to a coworker rather than a husband leaving for war. I should have known then, but part of me hoped I was mistaken. I was not. What she didn't realize was that I had planned for this moment. And what she didn't realize was that I never start fights, but I always end them. I first met Sarah at a friend's cookout in 2010. I was home between tours, staying with my friend Jason in Spokane. She was finishing nursing school but ended up working as an administrative assistant at a dental clinic instead, which she said was less stressful. We got married 8 months later. Sarah used to say she was proud of my service, but she never really understood it. Her father was a bank manager, and her brother was a pharmacist. No one in her family served in the military. She'd ask when I'd obtain a real job, unaware that after 15 years, the Army was my profession, not simply something I did to pass the time. We purchased our home in 2014. Nothing extravagant, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a tiny yard, and a peaceful area. My name was the only one on the mortgage because the VA loan was in my name, but I included her in the deed because that's what married people do. Share things. My father died a year after we married, from a heart attack while shoveling snow. My mother died 3 years later from lung cancer, despite never smoking a day in her life. They left me money. Not a fortune, but enough that Sarah and I could pay off our student loans while still having a cushion. During our marriage, I deployed 4 times. Twice to Iraq and twice to Afghanistan. Sarah appeared more distant and restless every time I returned home. As if she were playing a character she had outgrown. "I didn't sign up to be a military wife," she said once, when I proposed maybe re-enlisting for another 4 years. "I'm tired of being alone all the time." That made sense to me. I did. But the Army was the one place where I actually felt like I belonged. I was good at my job. People depended on me. In 2019, things began to change. Small things at the beginning. Sarah seemed annoyed when I called during her girls' night. Started talking about how her buddy Melissa had divorced her husband and was living her best life now. Started making comments about how we no longer had much in common. I advised counseling. She replied we were all right, just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work, the weekend trips with pals I'd never met, the new outfits, and the gym membership she barely used. I should have challenged her. But this is not how I manage things, never have. My father taught me to ponder before I speak, to be certain before acting. So I kept an eye on everything. I prepared silently. Because my instincts told me something was coming. And in this life, you learn to trust your instincts. 2 weeks after receiving the divorce email, I was seated in the mess hall when my phone buzzed with a notice from our bank app. Another withdrawal of $88,500. Almost everything that was left. I set down my fork and accessed the app. The joint account balance had dropped to $22.37. Our funds of $47,000, which we had saved up over the years, were gone. I was completely switched to an account that I did not recognize. Murphy, one of the lads in my platoon, looked over. "Is this bad news?" I locked my phone. "Nah, just some account stuff." That night, I called our bank from the BAF's call center. Sarah had been moving money for weeks, starting with tiny amounts and gradually increasing. The huge transfers began the day after I deployed. I hung up and stood in the corridor for a while, watching men laugh and call their children, wives, and parents. While my house was on fire, everyone else was going about their lives. That's when Wilson discovered me. "Heard from Alvarez that you looked like you'd seen a ghost at dinner," he informed me. "What's up?" I don't typically discuss personal information, but Wilson helped me get out of a horrible situation in Kandahar once. I trusted him. "My wife emptied our accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house," I told her. "Sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week." Wilson didn't say the typical "man, I'm sorry. That's rough," or "you'll find someone better." He just said, "What's your plan?" "Not sure yet," I replied. He nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." That night, I was unable to sleep. I took out my laptop and logged into our home security system, which Sarah undoubtedly forgot I could manage remotely. The cameras captured a weird truck in our driveway, as well as a man strolling our dog while holding my coffee mug and wearing my Seahawks sweater. Sarah was laughing in the kitchen that I had refurbished during my last leave. Something changed inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. Clearer. I closed the laptop and took out my phone. Created a list. Call James, an Army comrade turned lawyer. Check the VA loan terms. Contact the Master Sergeant about emergency leave. Review home refinance documentation, which Sarah mentioned briefly last year. Check the security of my military pension accounts. I wasn't feeling sad anymore. I did not even feel angry. I felt focused, as if I were preparing a mission. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about strategy. At 0500, before my shift began, I wrote James an email with the subject line, "Need legal help, discreet and urgent." An hour later, he replied, "Call me. Only use a secure line." When I hung up the phone, I knew exactly what to do. I did not need to yell, I did not need to threaten. I didn't even have to confront her. I merely had to wait and watch, and let her own actions set the trap. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. I didn't tell Sarah I was returning home. Did not make a call. I did not text. I just booked into a motel in downtown Spokane using a different identity and contacted James. We met in a diner 5 miles outside of town. "You look like hell," he remarked, slipping into the booth. "I like it too," I said. James gave me a folder. We discussed everything, including house deeds, loan documents, and bank statements. "And this?" He drew out a second paper. "Found something interesting when I was digging into your finances." It was a refinance application, with my signature on it. Except it was not my signature. Not exactly. Someone attempted to reproduce it but overlooked details. The middle initial was incorrect, and the stroke pattern was not mine. "Sarah did what?" I inquired, even though I already knew the answer. James nodded. "It was 3 months ago. I used the equity to withdraw $330,000. Your signature is essential because the VA loan is in your name exclusively. Forge my signature, take out a loan against our house, then clear out our accounts and divorce me," I suggested. "Busy woman?" "It gets better," James explained. She added her boyfriend as a co-applicant. He has a past, including 2 DUIs and a fraud accusation from 2019. I took a deep breath. "What are my options?" "Several," James answered. "But first, you need to decide what you want." I thought about it. I want what I legally own. And I want her to realize the implications. James smiled. "Then here's what we do." The following day I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's vehicle had left, but Sarah's automobile remained in the driveway. I parked down the street and observed for a bit. I thought about knocking on the door, confronting her. But that was not the plan. Instead, I drove to the bank. I met with the loan officer who processed the refinance. I showed him my military ID. I showed him the actual signature on my driver's license. Showed him the falsified paperwork. His face turned pallid. I'll need to report this immediately. I understand, I replied. I've already filed a police report. That night, Sarah texted me. Who were you talking to at the bank? Jeremy mentioned that someone was asking inquiries. I did not respond. The next day, I visited the county clerk's office. Filed paperwork to oppose the refinance owing to fraud. Registered an official notice that no changes may be performed to the property without my presence. 2 days later, Sarah called. I let it go to voicemail. David, we should talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing now? If this is about the divorce, we can talk like grown-ups. Like adults. She used the same terms in her email. I still haven't responded. James called that afternoon. They froze the refinance funds. And there is more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, correct? Which one bears your name? Yeah. He was pulled over this morning while driving on a suspended license from previous DUIs. They impounded the vehicle. Good, I said. He also had other intriguing things in the truck, such prescription sheets from Sarah's dental practice. They were not blank. I closed my eyes. She has been taking prescription pads. It looks that way. The police are conducting an investigation. I hung up and sat on the side of my motel bed. This was getting bigger than I had anticipated. Part of me wanted to call Sarah, warn her. Old habits. Then I remembered the security camera footage. My residence. My dog. My life was given away as if it didn't matter. This was the current path. I could not turn back. I honestly didn't want to. I met with the bank fraud investigator the following morning. Thompson was a little guy with sleepy eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. This happens more often than you'd think, he explained, spreading papers across his desk. Spouse deploys, other spouse sees an opportunity. What happens now? I asked. We have frozen the proceeds from the fraudulent refinance. But there is an issue. Some of the money has already gone. How much? About halfway, $14,600. I leaned forwards. Where has it gone? Thompson hesitated. I'm not supposed to share that information. This is my residence. My name was faked. My money was stolen. He slowly nodded and turned his computer screen to face me. These are the transfers out of the refinance account. I scanned the list. Multiple transfers to Daniel Spencer. Not Jeremy. Someone else I hadn't heard of. Who is Daniel Spencer? I asked. Thompson shrugged. This is not my department, but you should have your lawyer subpoena these records. I called James the moment I left the bank. Daniel Spencer? He repeated. Let me run a check. An hour later he called back. I got it. Daniel Spencer is a real estate agent. Specializes in rapid sales, cash deals. She was planning to sell our house, I replied. The understanding struck me like a physical punch. It looks that way. The deposits were likely earnest money to get him started on a listing. But here's where things get interesting. Spencer has done business with Jeremy Ryan previously. Jeremy Ryan, is that my wife's boyfriend? Yes, they've closed 3 agreements together during the last 2 years. I sat down on a park bench and tried to understand what had happened. So Sarah didn't just leave me for another guy. This was, what? A planned operation? Maybe, James replied cautiously. I dug into Jeremy Ryan. He follows a pattern, getting connected with ladies going through divorce or deployed spouses. I've found 3 cases thus far. Each time the woman's home is sold for significantly less than market value to one of Spencer's clients. Ryan gets a haircut. Then he moves on. And Sarah. She knew about it. Hard to say. Maybe she is a victim too. Perhaps she's in on it. I rubbed my cheek. It wasn't only Sarah betraying me anymore. This was something larger. Something calculated. Other military families had also fallen victim. What do we do? I asked. I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, James informed me. This spans state boundaries. Includes military troops and VA loans. They are interested. That night I sat in my hotel room drinking a beer and thinking about everything. I was wondering if Sarah had been playing me during our marriage, or if she had gotten caught up in Jeremy's plot. I wondered if it even mattered. My phone vibrated. Sarah again. David, please call me. The bank has said something about fraud. And Jeremy was arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's going on. I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Who is Daniel Spencer?" 3 dots emerged as she began typing. Then he stopped. I started anew. Stopped. Finally, "I don't know what you're talking about." 14,600, I wrote. Multiple transfers. House listing. There was no reaction for 10 minutes. Afterward, "It's not what you think." I turned off the phone and went to bed. The following morning, James called. "The FBI wants to meet. They've been looking into Ryan and Spencer for months. You're not the first, but you could be the one to bust it open." For the first time since receiving the divorce email, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally being revealed. I spoke with 2 FBI agents at their Spokane field office, Agent Patel and Agent Donovan. They recorded my statement and made copies of all the materials James and I had acquired. "Your case helps establish a pattern," Agent Patel explained. "Shows intent and organization. Make it a conspiracy rather than isolated incidents." "What about Sarah?" I asked. "My wife, ex-wife." The agents exchanged stares. "We're still determining her level of involvement," Donovan explained gently. "Did she ever bring up money difficulties? Is there any pressure to sell the house?" I reflected. "She kept telling us we were house poor and should downsize. I didn't see a need. Our mortgage payments were manageable given my wage." Patel made a note. "When did this start?" "About 6 months ago. Around the time she must have met Jeremy." "And the refinance?" Donovan inquired. "Never discuss it with me. She forged my signature while I was deployed." They asked more questions and took more notes. When we were finished, Patel gave me her card. "We will be in touch. In the meanwhile, do not confront your wife or Ryan. We have to develop this case carefully." I nodded. "Understood." That evening I returned to our neighborhood and parked down the street from our house. Jeremy's truck was back. He must have gotten it out of impound. Sarah's automobile was gone. My phone vibrated. Sarah texted, "We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow." I showed James the text during breakfast the next day. "Don't go," he suggested. "Nothing good can come from talking to her right now." "I won't," I said. "But I want to know what she's doing today while she thinks I'm meeting her." We drove to our house at 9:30 a.m. and parked across the street. Sarah emerged around 9:45 a.m., got into her car, and drove away, toward Riverfront Park. "What happens now?" James inquired. "Now we'll wait," I said. 20 minutes later, an automobile arrived. The real estate agent's logo is on the door. Daniel Spencer. Jeremy stepped out to greet him. They talked on the driveway, and then walked inside. "Should we follow them?" James inquired. I shake my head. "There's no need. Last year, I installed security cameras, both inside and outside. They upload to cloud storage." James smiled. "You didn't mention that before." "Never came up," I replied, taking out my phone. I launched the security app and adjusted the screen for James to see. Spencer and Jeremy were in the living room. Spencer was snapping photographs. Jeremy was pointing out aspects of the house. I turned the volume up. "Should list by the end of the week," Spencer said. "I've got a buyer interested already. Cash offer as usual." "How much?" Jeremy asked. "420. We listed at 470. And they offered 420. Everybody is happy." "How about the husband? Sarah claims he's causing issues." Spencer waved dismissively. "All military guys are the same. They create noise, but they have deployments and responsibilities. He'll accept a settlement to make it go away." I turned to face James. "Do you get it?" He was already capturing the feed with his phone. Every word. I forwarded the security feed access to Agent Patel with the following message. "Happening now." 30 minutes later, FBI trucks encircled our house. I watched from the street as agents led Spencer and Jeremy out in handcuffs. My telephone rang. Agent Patel. "Got them on tape discussing the fraud scheme," she claimed. "Additionally, conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempting to sell property under false pretenses. We'll need a formal statement from you. Of course, I replied. And Mr. Briggs, your wife has just arrived at the scene. She is distressed. I gazed down the road. Sarah stood on our lawn, hands over her mouth, watching FBI officers carry boxes of paperwork from our home. Whatever happened to her? I asked. That depends, Patel replied. On what she knows. And on what you want. I took a hard look at Sarah. 13 years of marriage. Good years at the start, before whatever this had become. I just want what's right, I admitted finally. The federal case went swiftly. Jeremy and Spencer both accepted plea bargains, identifying themselves and numerous other accomplices in what turned out to be a 3-state campaign targeting military families. Sarah insisted she knew nothing about the wider strategy. Jeremy had convinced her that I was hiding money and intended to leave her with nothing. He said the refinance was his idea. She'd simply gone along with it. Maybe it was true, perhaps it wasn't. In every case, she consented to a settlement that included complete return of the stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my military pension, and a formal confession to the forgery. In exchange, I did not file charges. 6 months after the email from Kandahar, the divorce was finalized. No fault. Overall, a clean break. Agent Patel called me on the day after the final paperwork was finalized. Jeremy Ryan received an 8-year sentence today for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Spencer received 12. I thought you'd like to know. Thank you, I replied. There's something else, she explained. We found proof that they had done this to 11 other military families. Your case helped us develop the pattern. Those families may receive their money back as a result of your actions. After we hung up, I sat on the porch of my rental apartment and watched the sunset. Thinking about those other families, those guys who deployed, believing their homes and marriages were secure, only to return to empty. I hadn't expected to be the one to bring down Jeremy and Spencer's organization. I only wanted what was mine. But occasionally, things work out unexpectedly. My phone vibrated. Sarah texted. I never intended for things to end like this. I did not respond. There was nothing more to say. 1 year later, I sold the house. I couldn't stand living in it any longer. Too many memories, too much treachery behind those walls. I used the money to purchase a tiny cabin outside Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres of land. There's a creek running behind it. There are no neighbors for miles. I retired from the Army early, after 20 years of service. I had given enough. I got a dog, a German Shepherd named Scout. Started doing carpentry for locals. Nothing fancy, but it kept my hands busy while also paying the bills. My military pension covered the remainder. Sometimes I thought about Sarah. I wondered where she ended up. James learned she had returned to her hometown in Oregon to work at another dentist clinic. I suppose we're starting over. I didn't detest her anymore. To be honest, I didn't have many feelings for her. She had made her decisions. And so had I. I received a letter one evening from a woman in Fort Worth. When Jeremy and Spencer attempted to carry out their scheme on her, her husband was in the Navy and had been deployed. The FBI had given her my name as part of the investigation. She wrote, "You don't know me, but you saved our home. Thank you. You fought back when it would have been easy to simply walk away." I read it twice and pinned it to my refrigerator. Some days, when the silence seemed too loud, or the memories too harsh, I'd glance at the letter and recall that something wonderful had come out of it. Jeremy was still in prison when I last heard. Spencer too. The system worked for once. For my part, I was figuring out how to proceed. Take one calm day at a time. Create something fresh. Something that cannot be stolen, or forged, or betrayed. Something that was uniquely mine. For good. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Father-in-law demanded me $4,000 every month, pushed me down the stairs, thought I would stay quiet. But I shocked them with lawyers. You want $3,000 more? After I already give you $4,000 every month? I said that trembling, seconds before my father-in-law tried to destroy me. Like a king giving an order, he folded his arms across his chest and leaned back in his recliner. I need a new car. he said in a matter-of-fact, clipped voice. The old one's falling apart. I don't see what the big deal is. You've got the money. My chest constricted. The big deal, Noah, is that I've already sacrificed enough for this household. I cover the bills, the groceries, your utilities. I even helped pay off Adam's credit cards. Now you want me to buy you a car? Yes, he said, raising his voice. Because I deserve it. I've done enough for this family. It's time for you to pull your weight. Do my share. I felt like I was slapped by the words. For years, I had been providing for this family by working non-stop while my father-in-law and my husband Adam regarded my paycheck as if it were a bottomless ATM. And now, Noah dared to accuse me of being selfish the one time I established a boundary. I'm not doing it, I firmly stated, refusing to back down. You'll have to figure out another way. The vein in his forehead bulged as his face contorted with anger. You're just like your mother, always thinking you're better than everyone else. His movements were aggressive and sharp, and he stood up suddenly. Don't you dare disrespect me in my own house. Your house? I retorted, trembling. This house is paid for with my money, Noah. He sprang forward and shoved me with both hands before I could respond. I was tumbling down the stairs when I felt my feet slip on the hardwood floor. My body ached, and the world became hazy. My head thumping from the impact, my arm twisted beneath me, I landed hard at the bottom. I was immobile for a moment. Tears stung my eyes as I struggled to breathe, and the pain was unbearable. Noah was standing at the top of the stairs above me, his face still twisted in rage. Then he spit out, "That's what happens when you don't respect me," and strode back into the living room. I thought Adam would come running over to help me up or at the very least check on me. However, he looked blank, almost bored, when he reached the top of the stairs. He shrugged and remarked, "Maya, you should have just given him the money. You know how he gets. My name is Maya, and I have been the breadwinner of a disrespectful household for the last 4 years. I believed that Adam and I were creating a life together, so I married him. However, it soon became evident that his father, Noah, was the center of his priorities. I agreed to move in with Noah to help out when his health started to deteriorate. I was unaware that helping out meant paying for everything, including Noah's personal expenses, food, utilities, and rent. I initially believed it to be transient. Even though Adam and Noah didn't always express it, I told myself that they valued what I was doing. However, their sense of entitlement increased over time. Adam said he had to be at home to help his father, so he completely quit working. Noah, on the other hand, started to demand more and more, acting as though my paycheck was his own. I stayed though, it was for the family's benefit, I told myself. But as I lay bruised and aching at the bottom of those stairs, I came to terms with the reality. There was no family here. It was a one-sided arrangement in which my worth was determined only by my contributions. And I was finished. That evening, I prepared a bag. With my heart racing with a mixture of fear and resolve, I gathered my belongings and left the room without saying anything to Adam or Noah. The pain of their treachery is still very much present. I knew I couldn't stay, but I wasn't sure where I was heading. I grabbed my phone and sat on the edge of the bed after checking into a motel. The weight of what had just transpired was bearing down on me. However, I refused to let it break me. I had been their rock and their safety net for years. They wouldn't be the same without me, and I wasn't going to catch them this time. The following morning I called. I said, "Angela," when the attorney responded. "I need your help. It's about my husband and his father." It felt like the first time I had breathed fresh air in years when I met my lawyer, Angela. I told her everything, including how Noah had insisted on more money for a car, how I had been paying for all household expenses, and how the argument had ended with me at the bottom of the stairs. She listened intently. Then Angela raised an eyebrow and said, "You've been financially supporting your husband and father-in-law entirely on your own?" I gave a nod. "For the past 4 years. Every bill, every expense, everything comes out of my pocket." Looking through her notes, she questioned. "And your name is on the mortgage or deed of the house?" I stated, "It's all in my name," in a firm tone. "They couldn't qualify for the loan without me. I pay for it. I own it." A tiny smile of knowing curled Angela's lips. "Then this is your house, Maya. Not theirs. We'll start with eviction papers for both of them." I felt a mixture of satisfaction and guilt when I considered evicting Adam and Noah. I had persuaded myself that I was acting morally for years by putting their needs ahead of my own. However, that night on the stairs, I came to the realization that loyalty and kindness were meaningless to those who viewed me as nothing more than a tool. I said, "What about Noah pushing me? He could have seriously hurt me." Angela stated resolutely, "We'll include that in the lawsuit. You're not just evicting them, you're holding them accountable for their behavior. Let's make sure you get justice." The weeks that followed were filled with preparation. Angela assisted me in obtaining all the documentation I required to bolster my argument, including bank statements, receipts, and even text messages in which Noah and Adam made their rightful demands. It was both reassuring and frustrating to see everything presented in black and white. I had been telling myself for years that I was exaggerating and that things weren't as horrible as they appeared. However, the figures were honest. Adam and Noah had only offered criticism and grievances, but I had invested tens of thousands of dollars in that house. Additionally, Angela urged me to record the stairway incident. She stated, "We'll have to demonstrate that there has been a history of abusive or threatening behavior. Money isn't the only factor here. It's about establishing a secure environment for your future." Secure. I was surprised by how hard the word hit me. I had neglected my physical and emotional safety for years in favor of other people's needs. I was fighting for myself for the first time. I began quietly planning to start over in the interim. I started moving my belongings covertly, one carload at a time, to a tiny apartment near my place of employment. I stayed as far away from Adam and Noah as I could because the house still felt like a minefield. Adam was hardly aware that I was gone. The majority of his time was spent glued to the couch or debating something with his father. Noah, meanwhile, was still upset that I had declined to purchase a car for him. It felt like a tightrope walk every time I interacted with him. But I didn't back down. Setting up the legal bombshell they would never have anticipated was the last piece of the puzzle. Angela prepared a civil lawsuit for damages related to the assault and financial exploitation, as well as eviction papers that would require them to leave the house within 30 days. She cautioned, "They won't take this well. Be ready for some criticism." With my resolve solidifying, I declared, "I'm ready. For too long, they have been pushing me around." Keeping my plans to myself was the most difficult aspect. I appeared distracted to my coworkers, but I dismissed their worries with evasive justifications about domestic stress. In actuality, I felt as though I was leading two separate lives. While one of me was discreetly regaining her independence, the other was still acting like the lovely wife and daughter-in-law. In my new apartment, I would lie awake in the middle of the night, reliving every moment. The hurt and rage would seethe inside me, threatening to overtake me. I would then consider the time I would deliver the documents to them. I saw their faces, Adam's apathy turning to incredulity, Noah's arrogant confidence crumbling, and it gave me the willpower to press on. At last the day arrived. As we walked up the driveway, Angela's cool professionalism grounded me as she met me at the house. As she rang the doorbell, the pile of papers in her hand felt heavier than it should have, and my heart raced. When Noah opened the door and saw me standing next to Angela, his face instantly turned sour. "What are you looking for?" he yelled. Angela never skipped a beat. "Mr. You've been served, Williams," she said, passing the documents to him. "Within 30 days, you and your son must leave this property. In addition, my client is suing you in civil court for financial exploitation and assault-related damages." "What on earth is this?" Noah flipped through the papers and barked, his face flushed. "This is not possible for you. This is my home." "No," I said, maintaining a steady tone of voice in spite of my chest thumping. "It's my home. Additionally, you are no longer welcome here." Rubbing his eyes as if he had just woken up, Adam emerged in the doorway. "What's happening?" he muttered. The papers were thrust at him by Noah. "Your wife believes she can expel us. Is this unbelievable?" Adam furrowed his brow as he skimmed the papers. "This is crazy, Maya. You can't just—" I looked him in the eye and interrupted. "I can." And I did. They were silent for a moment. I could see the panic beginning to seep into their faces as the situation's reality set in. They couldn't just dismiss this argument or use guilt to get me to comply with their demand. They were powerless to stop this from happening. Angela gestured for me to follow her as she turned to go. She declared, "They've been served. Leave now." I felt as though the burden of years of abuse had been lifted as I left. I felt free for the first time in years. As I sat in my car across the street, watching Angela approach the door for the last time, the house felt uncannily quiet. She had demanded that the official lawsuit and notice of eviction enforcement be delivered by her. I had been waiting for this moment. The time when Noah and Adam would at last understand the seriousness of their actions. I watched Angela ring the doorbell and hold the papers with assurance. Noah opened the door a few moments later, his face changing from annoyance to bewilderment to unadulterated fury. I could hear his voice erupting even from my car. "This is absurd. With his fists clenched at his sides, he roared. She can't harm me like this. This house has been my home for many years. Angela's tone stayed composed and businesslike. Mr. Williams, this property is entirely owned by my client, Maya, as I mentioned when we last served you. Your 30-day notice is over. Additionally, you are legally obligated to leave as of right now. Any non-compliance will lead to additional legal action. Behind him, Adam emerged. He moaned as he squinted at the papers Angela gave him, his face still swollen from sleep and his hair unkempt. Maya, seriously, what is all this? Angela did not recoil. This is a civil lawsuit for damages totaling $20,000, including compensation for the physical assault, financial exploitation, and emotional distress caused by both Mr. Williams and Mr. Adam Williams. These proceedings will move forward regardless of whether you vacate today. I could see Noah's rage boiling over as his face turned beet red. He grabbed the papers out of Adam's hands, tore them in two, and tossed the fragments on the porch. He yelled, "You think this is going to scare me? You can't evict family. This is my house." Angela remained motionless. "That's for the court to decide, Mr. Williams. But for now, the sheriff's department will be here shortly to ensure that the eviction is carried out." I saw Adam standing behind Noah, wide-eyed and in a panic, before he slammed the door in her face. He appeared to realize for the first time that this wasn't just another dispute that could be settled. There was no escape from this reality. Angela went back to the car and slid into the passenger seat, her steps deliberate. "They're fuming," she said, grinning wryly. "But I doubt they'll try anything stupid. The sheriff will handle it from here." I released a long breath that I had been holding without realizing it. I had been caught in a vicious cycle of caving in and allowing their disrespect, abuse, and entitlement to wear me down for years. Now, however, I was in charge for the first time. It felt good, but it felt alien. I gave myself permission to visualize the scene inside the house while we waited for the sheriff. Noah was pacing hysterically and complaining about how unfair everything was. To avoid interacting, Adam most likely slouched on the couch and browsed through his phone. Adam had always followed Noah's instructions, I cleaned up the mess, and they had always had the same dynamic. However, that is no longer the case. Noah screamed at the officers about how he had been wronged and rushed outside when the sheriff's car arrived. He yelled, "She's lying. This is my house, I've lived here for decades. She can't just throw me out like this." Angela handed him the paperwork, which the lead officer calmly went over. "This property is legally in Ms. Maya's name, and these eviction proceedings are valid," he insisted. "You've been given ample notice, Mr. Williams. You need to gather your belongings and vacate immediately." Noah screamed, his voice full of rage, "I won't. You'll have to drag me out of here." At last, Adam came out with a hurriedly packed duffel bag. His expression was a mix of confusion and rage as he glanced at me from the other side of the street. He yelled, "Why are you doing this, Maya? We're family." Family was a word that sliced through me like a blade. For years, they had twisted its meaning to support their disrespect and entitlement, using it as a weapon. However, I was determined not to be held captive by it any longer. I exited the car and looked directly into Adam's eyes with a level of composure I wasn't aware I possessed. "Family doesn't push you down the stairs," I stated steadily. "Family doesn't take your money and treat you like you owe them everything. This house is mine. My life is mine. And I won't let either of you take anything more from me." I didn't hear Noah yelling something unintelligible from the porch. I looked at Adam, who looked at me for a long time before lowering his gaze. He didn't have a comeback for once, no justifications. With his father still yelling behind him, he slung the duffel bag over his shoulder and trudged down the driveway without saying another word. Angela put a comforting hand on my shoulder as the sheriff's officers led Noah back inside to collect his things. "You've done it," she uttered softly. "This chapter is over?" I was overcome with feelings of relief, pride, and an overwhelming sense of freedom as I watched Adam and Noah leave the house for the last time. This was more than just a legal win. I considered it a win for myself. I had defeated those who had attempted to denigrate me for the first time in years. A tiny smile tugged at my lips as I turned to face Angela. "Let's go," I said. "I've got a life to rebuild." The absence of Noah and Adam made the house feel so much bigger. I was struck by how different everything seemed without their constant presence as I moved through the silent rooms. The area that had previously felt confining felt like a blank canvas, a place I could at last call my own. The last remnants of their entitlement had been taken with the sheriff when he left a short time ago. Up until the very end, Noah had resisted, complaining about the unfair treatment he had received. However, he had nothing left to hold on to. A shadow of the man who had once pledged to start a life with me, Adam had been more reserved. It had been bittersweet to watch him go, pulling his duffel bag down the driveway. I was no longer angry, only pitying. As I locked the front door, Angela remained by my side. Her tone was warm as she said, "You've done something not many people have the courage to do. It's hard to walk away from people you've invested so much in, even when they don't deserve it." As her words sank in, I nodded. "I think I finally realized it wasn't just about the money," I replied. "It was about taking back control. For years, I let them make me feel like I didn't have a choice. Like I owed them everything. But I don't owe them anything." I started to piece my life back together over the course of the following few days. To help get rid of the tangible reminders of Noah and Adam's presence, I hired a cleaning service and changed the locks on the house. Erasing the mess they had left behind felt symbolic, almost healing. I didn't feel alienated in my own house for the first time in years. Coworkers and friends contacted me to see how I was doing and to offer words of support and encouragement. Lily said, "You're amazing for standing up for yourself," one afternoon while they were having coffee. "It would have been so easy to just keep putting up with it, but you didn't." I confessed, I think I just reached a breaking point. When Adam told me I should have given Noah the money, I realized he didn't care about me at all. And if he didn't care, then why was I giving so much of myself to him? Lily gave a nod. "It's hard to see that when you're in it, but you're out now. That's what matters." I once had calls from Noah and Adam, but I didn't answer. Angela gave me her word that they had no legal basis to contest the lawsuit or the eviction. She declared, "You've already won." And I took her word for it. I felt untouchable for the first time in a long time. I turned my attention to the future. I began looking into new hobbies and career options that I had put off for too long. I had more time and energy to devote to myself since I wasn't burdened by their demands. I even started thinking about selling the house, my house, and relocating. Somewhere where the ghosts of the past were not present. I took some time to think back on the path that had led me here one evening while enjoying a glass of wine on the patio. Although it hadn't been simple at all, each step and each difficult moment had taught me something about my own resilience. I had allowed other people to determine my value for years. However, that is no longer the case. With the stars just starting to appear in the sky, I gazed out at the peaceful street. I felt completely free for the first time in years. I was at last living this life according to my own terms. After a few months, everything in my life had changed drastically. The house where Noah and Adam used to live no longer felt like a prison. Now it was mine, really mine. The life I was reconstructing for myself was reflected in every nook and cranny. Peace and quiet now filled the walls that once echoed with their entitlement and demands. I had finally decided to list the house for sale, which felt like a permanent end to that chapter. The lawsuit against Noah was moving forward in my favor, and Angela assisted me in overcoming the financial and legal obstacles. There was more to the compensation I could expect than just financial gain. The goal was to make him answerable. The knowledge that he would be held accountable for his actions brought a sense of closure in and of itself. Things felt lighter in my new apartment. I finally had the time and energy to devote to myself without the constant weight of their expectations. I resumed my yoga practice, picked up painting again, and even organized a trip to a peaceful seaside town that I had always wanted to see. I felt like I was living, not just surviving, for the first time in years. My loved ones became aware of the shift. Lily remarked, "You look happier," during one of our coffee dates. "Like a weight's been lifted." "Because it has," I grinned and replied. For years, I thought walking away meant giving up. But now I realize it was the bravest thing I've ever done. She made a fictitious toast with her cup. "To brave new beginnings." I added, "To never settling for less," as I pressed my cup to hers. I was no longer troubled by Noah and Adam's absence. I stopped thinking about what had happened that night on the stairs and stopped questioning whether I had made the correct decision. I was certain that I had. Despite their attempts to minimize me, their actions ultimately strengthened me. I was able to move on without their explanations or apologies. They had nothing to do with the new life I had created, and that was sufficient. A few weeks later, the lawsuit's final verdict was rendered. Damages were ordered to be paid by Noah. And even though I didn't think he would ever voluntarily take responsibility, the decision provided me with closure. It was a formal recognition of all that I had gone through. An affirmation that my story was significant. I stood in the empty living room one last time on the day I gave the house's keys to the new owners, allowing the memories to pass. The hurt, the betrayal, the anger, all of it was still there. But I was no longer under its control. I regained my authority. And in doing so, I rediscover who I am. I experienced a calmness I hadn't experienced in years as I went outside and shut the door. The path ahead was clear and paved with opportunities. And I was eager to see where it would take me for the first time in a long time. This marked the conclusion of more than one chapter. It was the start of a story that was all mine. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode.